Good day to you all. On behalf of the CSJ Center for Reconciliation and Justice, welcome to the Playa Vista campus, and welcome to our April discussion and screening, Justice and Spirituality on Screen. We will be discussing and looking at the 2002 feature film, Real Women Have Curves, directed by Patricia Cardoso. With me today on the stage is Ms. Delmy Ruíz, faculty in the LMU Center for Religion and Spirituality and head of the Mantener el Camino program. Welcome, Delmy. As well as Jesuit Father Martin No, campus minister and head of the Christian Life Communities here at Loyola Marymount University as well. Welcome to you. Let's jump right into this. What did you think of the film? Delmy, let's start with you.
All right, thank you. So I really do like this film. I had previously had the opportunity to watch it, and I saw it again yesterday in preparation for today, and I see a lot of similarities with Ana and myself, and also similarities with that of relatives and friends as we're growing up, the first generation Latina female experience, daughter to immigrant parents. I really do feel that this story does resonate with a lot of Latinos and immigrant families as well. So I greatly enjoy this film, and I think it really brings a lot of important issues to light, and really helps others understand the different struggles that we often face.
Martin.
No, totally agree. I know we're just touching base a little bit earlier before we went live, but I know it's a different culture in the movie, but there were so many intersections that matched up with, growing up in a Vietnamese family. My parents were immigrants from the Vietnam War, and mom was a seamstress for 13 years. So just seeing like images of the sewing factory and all that clothing. I could still remember like just piles of clothing everywhere, and my two younger sisters and I have like sinus issues because it was just dust everywhere all the time, and it was just really a moving and tackling some of those like generational like issues that are kind of timeless, and just what a great movie that isn't afraid to really walk through that like common life and really difficult issues. So I was very moved by the movies.
So this film resonates with you both quite personally, too, in your own experience.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you find that portrayal to be fairly accurate to your own experiences, or at least aspects of it?
Definitely, I see a lot of aspects that do resonate with my experience growing up. As a first-generation Latina, my parents immigrated to this country looking for a dream for their children. So they sacrificed a lot of things with lots of love, and they really wanted me to get a college education. So for me, it was always very important to find that balance of finding my dream and also helping my parents' dream become a reality, which also means having to balance that desire to achieve while also having a lot on your shoulders, which can sometimes become a little much, but once that dream was accomplished, it really made everything worthwhile. So my parents were always very supportive of me in getting a college education, and I think without their support, that wouldn't have been possible. So it was very important for me to see how the father is very supportive of his daughter and helping her achieve that dream, even though the mother was not quite completely on board, which is something I have seen with other relatives and friends. We're in high school, we're talking about college and our dreams and what we would like to major and, pursue as a career. And then when it came time to apply to college and actually receive those acceptances, sometimes they would have to share, I'm actually not going to be able to move forward with this. I actually have to put this on hold. My plan is to come back to this later, and I have to find a job to help support my family. So it definitely resonates with experiences a lot of us have growing up.
I totally identify with a lot of those experiences as well. Our parents, my mom especially, just working so hard, hoping that the rest of the family could kind of not have to duplicate that, situation of needing to work that hard. But at the same time, kind of what's also aligning with the movie too is that there will also be expectations from the generation that has had this trauma of escaping such a situation like war or any other situation that makes you leave your own national home, but certainly that puts a lot of pressure on the kids. And so I know Delmy and I were just touching base a little bit before this about, like my parents would do whatever they could to keep us living at home because it was time to go to college, and got accepted to a few colleges. One of them was UC Irvine, so we were...
we're fellow anteaters, which is very exciting to find out.
Yeah, and it was, it was this kind of negotiation to see how, the kids could stay home as long as possible and not move out. And so that was one of the values playing out that seemed to resonate with, Anna in the film, so...
And a funny story to go off of that, I was sharing with Michael and Martin just previously that my parents had hoped that I would be commuting to Irvine from mid-city Los Angeles every single day. And
That's
I was
a
really
long commute.
Very long. I would have been on the road quite a lot. And I remember trying to talk to them to, let me have that college experience so I could really immerse myself in my classes, extracurricular activities. I had so many activities I wanted to join already. And it wasn't until we went to a sort of orientation, Welcome to UCI event that Mecha and the Social Sciences Department hosted together. And we were talking to professors, and one of them asked what my plans would be and where I would be dorming. And I explained the situation to them and shared that my parents were hoping I would be commuting. And they were really surprised and really spoke to my parents, and were able to give them that final nudge to let them have that experience for me of being able to dorm on campus. And so that was made a reality. So it's just a funny story where we're thinking about, okay, how parents want us to have that college experience, but really hoping to have us close to home at the same time.
You bring up an interesting point, both of you, in terms of what college meant in your own experience. In the same way that the idea of college is a real catalyst to Anna's discernment in the film, why is that important? What is it about college, not only as a trope in the film, but as an experience for first generation? What does it mean? I'm wondering, Delmy, maybe you can unpack that a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for Anna, she's able to see that college is going to be able to open doors for her. She sees the struggles her family and her sister face in their respective work, So I think she really wants to be able to pursue that as an opportunity. And very similar to what we've been sharing and what we see, college, when we think of that, is an opportunity that will open multiple doors for the students, especially as a first-generation college student, opportunities that our parents didn't have, that they gave up in order for us to be able to pursue, and really hoping for us to get a career. And like Martin shared, hoping that we don't have to do the labor-intensive work that they did. So it really helps us open opportunities. And I think of college and I think of the word hope. That's really what I think of, really opening doors for the first generation of children like myself growing up here, and really being able to make that a reality and continue to open doors into a new career and a new pathway for not just ourselves, but our family as well. Because when we're able to achieve this dream, we achieve the dreams of the people before us who made it a possibility through their sacrifice and love.
Along those lines, in your work, you work primarily with students in similar situations, either first to go, first generation, or perhaps working adults who are now looking to pursue that dream. What have you found in that experience is some of the opportunities and perhaps tensions in terms of, one individual's commitment to the family and to work, and perhaps that is, in that person's mind, antithetical to the college aspirations? Is there a real tension there? Is there a real conflict there? Or am I conflating things that aren't really there?
You know what? There is a tension. I greatly enjoy working with students who are pursuing their educational journey and are all at different levels, but I have been able to see that unfortunately those tensions still do exist with a lot of the students who have their own families and are the main breadwinners for their homes. So I do see them having to sometimes take a pause, and especially during the times of pandemic, they've been hit really hard in terms of not having as many working hours, and so that has decreased their income to their home. And I've seen them have to make choices in terms of pursuing their college education, or maybe taking a pause and trying to find additional part-time positions that can really help them continue to support their family. So I have seen that struggle, and I've had multiple conversations with students about what we can do to support them. So the importance of scholarships is something that's really there to support the students, and I've seen firsthand how scholarships can really help our students pursue their dreams.
And the importance of accompaniment as well, as I understand.
Absolutely. I think really as first-generation college students, which is the population that I'm very blessed to work with, I'm able to see that a lot of the struggles that I face myself are struggles that they face. So I'm able to put myself in their shoes a lot and really think of how I can better support them as they're navigating this. They're all mainly first in their family to pursue an educational journey here within the US. So a lot of things are different for them in terms of terms and not being familiar with what they need to be doing to meet deadlines, to apply for scholarships, FAFSA, a lot of the things that when we were growing up, we also may not have known or been aware of. And I think the support of a mentor, someone to help guide them, and really have someone that they can reach out to when they need help, and also being there for them in a way that makes them comfortable to come to us with these questions. And so I always relate to them, and I'm always happy to share my story with my students. I let them know, hey, I'm first generation. A lot of these things that you may be afraid to ask me are things I didn't know. And for me personally, when I was growing up and I was in high school, or really throughout my entire education, teachers have played a really important role with me. They've helped support me, guide me, and provide me really with information that I didn't really know and was aware of growing up in order to pursue my college education.
So there's a lot to discern here.
There is.
Which brings me to the excitement I have of having a Jesuit campus minister here, because here comes the discernment question.
Me?
Father.
Is he talking about me?
So, big decisions. What does our tradition have in terms of understanding discernment of big decisions? It's very much central to our spiritual work. So perhaps you can unpack that a bit for us.
Yeah, totally. I'd love to. I love the word that you guys were breaking open, accompaniment, and just to weave into discernment. I'm clearly biased. I'm a Jesuit, so Ignatian spirituality is just my bread and butter. But it was something that even before knowing what a Jesuit was something that felt organic as a spirituality. The bedrock of like the spirituality rests on, a God that loves you, accompanies you, and there's just this unconditional love that's always your net, your footing. And so discernment is just to kind of develop this relationship with a God that is very personal, very much real, in a way that just grounds you, which is also why this film was so moving. It just never looked away from the mundane. Like, it was just not afraid to see God in these very ordinary moments, look at these very awkward, difficult, everyday situations in the face. And that, I think, is the beauty of discernment, because it's grounded in the real. And there's a couple ways kind of to look at it too. It's just, you could feel like, you're on your own making these decisions, or realize that, there's this love that is personal, that is there with you. And when you allow yourself to kind of be moved by such a deep love, it really informs the way that you look at issues, look at problems. It really informs the way that we make decisions. And I think that's part of the art of spiritual discernment, at least according to the Ignatian spirituality. So just basically letting God's love really hold oneself up, and letting that love kind of guide the parameters, because sometimes we just kind of wrangle things into our own calculations, and that's not bad, but sometimes it could also be very we can feel kind of alone, and like things just don't add up right, and we're just frustrated, banging our head over and over. So, so just a couple pieces that are involved with spiritual discernment in our tradition. So.
I think of St. Augustine and his writings on restlessness and answering that restless desire. And I look at Anna's character in the film, it's very well acted by America Ferrera. In just the way her body language, her mannerisms, her facial expressions demonstrate a sense of restlessness and frustration, even when she's ironing the dresses. A practical question then. How would one, clearly the restlessness is not going away, she has to address that part of her. How do we address that part of ourselves? What are the exercises that we do to address that restlessness in us, that deep longing that clearly is not, I can't keep pat down, it is gonna come out? How do I ride that wave?
I love that question. I mean, there's a number of ways that, we can kind of approach. One way I like thinking about narratives in the Bible, there's some really rich narratives. When I think of Anna, I think of Mary of Nazareth. And just, clearly she had that epic yes moment that made the difference for, the entire world. That's kind of a tough bar to follow. But the point of that, though, is that following that, she had something that one cannot hope to kind of figure out by yourself. And I think there is the narrative of her, looking out at like her cousin Elizabeth, for instance, and that the kind of all the scariness, but also the excitedness of what's possible and what's ahead. And I think of that time, that month with Elizabeth, that narrative is a moment of who do we have in our life who can relish, who can hold us, who can kind of, where hope within these two women can burgeon, and where mutual sharing can happen, where support can be offered. What a holy thing. It's just, so we in a way look towards some of these very life-giving narratives, especially when it comes to making tough decisions, and then the restlessness you're talking about too. I mean, and the Augustinian thought there, and then juxtapose that with Matthew, where Jesus says, come to me, you who labor and are restless, and you will find rest. And I know I'm a big fan of that kind of the image of the God-shaped hole, and we try to fill it with all kinds of things in our life and over, and it just never really satiates that deep desire. Only God does. And so we just keep this dynamic search going on, whether we latch on biblical narrative or, we use the Ignatian spiritual discernment route where we just, cultivate our relationship with Jesus or with God, and let that love kind of inform our life. I think these are ways of kind of facing restlessness or facing tough decisions that play out against the backdrop of cultural needs or other things like that. So,
what do you think this film says? And I'll pose this to both of you, and I appreciate the responses you've shared so far. Thank you. This has been wonderful. The film really, in my mind, I see it as a coming-of-age story. It's a traditional coming-of-age tale. But not only just for Anna, but for other characters as well. And I think that sometimes is a note that gets lost, as we sometimes think of the coming-of-age as something that only the young do. But coming-of-age is a cycle we go through at any particular age, multiple times in our lifetimes. What do you think the film says, and juxtapose that with our tradition, as well, the spiritual traditions we're talking about here. What do both these things have to say about the emergence of one's identity, their own individual identity? I mean, what are your thoughts on those? Delmy?
I definitely see the evolution that Anna does. She really grows into herself and isn't afraid to speak. And at the end of the film, without giving away the ending, you really see her walking with a lot of confidence. And that's something that she also wanted for her sister Estella. She wants her sister to stand up and be her own person, and she's trying to help her get there in her own way, of course, that Estella might not see right away, but I really like that there's one particular scene I'm thinking of where you really see Anna, Estella, and the rest of the ladies that are a part of a team, and you really see them grow comfortable with themselves. Anna's mom really isn't on board with that particular event, but you really do see them growing into themselves and just really becoming comfortable with their identities, their bodies, who they are, and not being afraid to show that with one another. So I think it's really important that families help one grow within their own identity. And sometimes that's something that can be lacking, because I know sometimes parents really want to impose their own thoughts and ideas. But I think with the support of parents, we're really able to explore who we are, what we want to do, what we hope to accomplish, and how we want to get there. Sometimes might not exactly be on board with what we're doing, but I think it's really important that we ask ourselves a lot of these questions. What do we enjoy doing? How can we do this? How will this impact my family, while also making those decisions? But I think really becoming our own self is something really important, because we'll be the ones living our life, and we want to make sure that we're happy. So I really did see Anna growing into that confidence to be who she wants to be and pursue her dreams.
That was such a joyful moment. That was possibly my favorite moment too. I mean, like, just, oh gosh, like, you know, the body positivity of the movie is such a big facet of it too. I mean, so refreshing, such a joyful and kind of a wild moment too. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is happening. This is great. No, mom would freak out. like, are you kidding me? But so great. I mean, also without like ruining it, there was another moment similarly related where, you know, Anna, our protagonist, you know, says, "Hey, turn on the lights. I want you to see me." And I just,
Yeah, that was a lovely moment. That was a really nice moment.
I mean, like, you know, what a intimate, what a bold thing to ask. And like, I think when I saw that, I'm like, oh wow, what a great way to pray too. Like, you know, this is, you know, I can ask, God help me to let the world just kind of see me, not, you know, need to put on any airs or whatever. Like, yeah, it was just such a great thing. And also keying back into the accompaniment piece, I think. And earlier, as Delmy was speaking, I was just thinking, wow, I really could have used like a college counselor like this. I was so lost. Like, I was like, being so inundated by the practical issues makes it difficult to look at even identity issues, because like, I'm just trying to, like, okay, there was a time when filling out, like, applying for college meant like doing stuff on paper. Like, what's this packs of paper?
This paper you speak of.
Paper, oh my
Paper?
gosh. It was this big, like, manila envelope we had to turn in before a certain deadline, and it was just so daunting.
I don't think people today understand the intimidation factor when that 500-page ream of paper showed up at your front table. Now it's a link.
You're too tired to click a link?
You kids, come on.
No. I mean, it could be overwhelming too, because now the bar is probably like, oh wait, you only applied to 40 colleges? I applied to like back then I was like, I got like 4 packages out, I think. I was like, but you know, in that regard though, I think having, you know, loving accompaniment, either in the form of like a college counselor, like identifying those you might name as like your sacred village, you know, helps the identity to kind of have a safe place to bloom and come about. Again, the topic of, you know, you have such deep love and respect for family. That's always going to be the case. But like, where, you know, the transformations can be tough. Like, you know, what we don't know what happens to Anna. You know, those first years when we finally left the family for college, it's like, can we trust that, you know, even though we have to kind of let go of family for the sake of our identity, like that love will still like stay there. It's not going to abandon us, even if, you know, mom and dad are going to be pissed for a while. Like, you know, like it's, I don't know how, you might think about.
In your experiences, both having gone through this yourselves, and especially I would be curious in your experience, Delmy, as a counselor in these situations, when that does happen, when there is, when a young student, a college-bound student, finds their own destiny that's perhaps different from what the family may want at that moment, I would imagine there's some moment of consternation, but do you find that there's eventually a reconciliation that's just this letting go phase?
You know, it can vary, and I've seen multiple instances where there is, you know, an agreement that they eventually come to, but I've also seen the opposite happen. But I think communication and being open to the possibility of change and really taking the time to listen to what the other person is hoping to be able to achieve is really important. So I have seen where, you know, parents sit down and talk to their student, their child who's hoping to embark on this journey. And I think it's really important that they understand the entire situation, the colleges, and one reason that I've seen be the major factor in trying to discern whether their child is able to go to college is really the finance portion. That's really the piece that will make it or break it, unfortunately. And so I've always asked parents to wait for the financial aid package that's being offered. And I talk about the importance of FAFSA. And I'm always, you know, open about my story as well. I'm like, without FAFSA, I wouldn't have been able to attend college or make that a possibility.
I can share in that experience.
Yeah, grants and scholarships are really important. And so I always tell parents, like, please, you know, don't close the door on the possibility. Allow students to apply to a college. A lot of the families that are working class, low income qualify for the fee waivers. So I'm like, there's no cost attached. Allow them to apply. Let's try to find a good college that could be a good fit. Apply to various options, some close, some a little further away. We'll see what happens, where they get accepted. Wait for FAFSA. That's going to be really the deciding factor, because sometimes all we see is the sticker price, which does scare us, you know? I remember in high school when I saw how much it would cost to attend a UC and a CSU, I was like, oh, I don't know if my parents can afford this, and I don't want to, you know, put that burden on them. So again, we're thinking back to family and how that's going to impact everyone. So I always tell families, like, please wait. We can look at the financial aid package together and really help one another understand what this really means in terms of cost, because it unfortunately always kind of goes back to finances. And then families, I've seen them also wanting to keep the family together. I've seen instances where families are like, but there's a school right down the street, why can't they go there? And so again, trying to explain the differences between CSUs, UCs, and even amongst themselves and community colleges, and making sure that they're on the right track for themselves. And I've seen students say, hey, my plan is to go to community college, I'm working, and then I'll be able to transfer, but also making sure they don't get lost in that pathway. And same thing with students who go directly to a four-year university, making sure they're aware of the resources, the support, because again, sometimes we can get lost. We're one of thousands of students, so making sure they know who they can turn to for help. So I think that's really important too.
So we're not in this alone. Yeah. We're not in this alone, you know, and to your point, Martin, about the importance of accompaniment, that as someone perhaps begins to discern their own individual identity, let's think spiritually again, you know, let's talk about the importance of accompanying somebody on their own, how do I want to phrase this? How do we accompany someone in the journey of self-discovery? And because clearly we can't do it alone, and our tradition says otherwise.
Absolutely. I think 95% of the work is accompaniment, and it, in a way, it takes the least training in the sense of you kind of just have to be there in a loving way and be a listening presence. But it's like most of the work, because I think most people, and myself included, find myself in these situations where it's so easy to be prescriptive, and, you know, and here's a quote from da-da-da, or, you know what you want to read, you know, so that you can get out of my face.
3 Bible passages and call me in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. 3 times a day. But the work of just kind of letting, there's a lot of, especially these last 2-3 years. I mean, oh my gosh, the tombs of grief and unprocessed stuff is going to be coming out more and more and more. Like, how do we cultivate this habit of like letting lament come out, letting grief come out, and be these kind of, accompanying figures also professionally as well as in a way of in a loving, human way, and not worry to rush to the end. You know what you ought to try next? Like, that'll come. We have like, countless ingenuities and Bible passages and things like that. But just to be there, just to kind of not be afraid to, hear a problem and just, like take it. But yeah. So.
Have you found in both your works the pandemic having changed the culture of this accompaniment? I mean, here we are, people have been in isolation, many people have been in isolation for 2 years. Have you found that has had an impact in how people think of their identity and go through this growth period?
Absolutely. I mean, just working in campus ministry at LMU, I mean, there is this kind of blanket of gloom, some students would say. There's just this, through their free and open kind of acknowledgement of these things going on, I believe like myself and my generation, older generations, learn to name and frame these things going on in ourselves as well. So I find myself learning new vocabulary to name things that are going in my own experience as well. I heard another phrase like, we're so tired of like toxic positivity. Like, you just need to be happy. Be happy, and it's like, oh my gosh, like you're killing them with happiness. But I don't know. So it's really refreshing, but also like heartbreaking every day. That I'm like, oh my gosh, it just feels there's so much inundating our young people today, and there's not any ready answers. Because it feels in a way we're still kind of learning and in the middle of it. I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I agree. I work with older adults through the Mantener el Camino program, and through the pandemic, they have been impacted quite a lot with work and financial losses. But one of the things that they've shared is that because we had to move to becoming only via Zoom, technology was something that they were not quite familiar with. So they've seen themselves grow and learn more about technology and the usage of that, and using technology to connect with others. And a lot of students have shared that technology and being able to see people through Zoom in class and workshops and our check-in meetings is something that really kept them going, because a lot shared that they felt isolated. They weren't able to visit family as often. A lot were, really just trying to stay home and take care of themselves and family members. A lot of them live with older parents or folks that, kind of needed to have that extra care. And they've really said that this time of being alone has allowed them to discern a little bit more about themselves and what they hope to pursue, and really grow in ways that they hadn't foreseen. And so that resonates a lot too. And I know a lot have been sharing, like, people expect us to be happy and, kind of be grateful for these times. But a lot of us, they were like, being isolated is different for us. Having less working hours hasn't been helpful. So a lot of them were sharing, like, we're trying to, turn to God during this time and really learn more about ourselves and understand how things happen for a reason and what God is hoping for us to do and what path He wants us to follow.
Anna's going to school in the film. I'm assuming it's 2002, so let's assume it's 2002 in the film. So she's going to school at the advent of a lot of this technology. So Facebook is Facebook's probably going to be something she'll begin to experience when she was there, because that came out when we were in college, or at least I was in college. Yeah, so I mean, I'm curious, when you're bringing up technology, how do you think technology, especially social media in the last years, has perhaps changed this coming of age tradition as well?
I'm gonna come out like strong on this one. I've had conversations with people about technology, and my undergrad was in computer science.
Preach, Father, don't hold back.
I know. I'm just saying. I'm gonna roll up the sleeves here.
The pulpit's right there.
Yeah. I mean, oh gosh, what was the? There was a documentary on Netflix, The Social Experiment, I think.
Oh yeah.
It was an experiment. I mean, it had a lot of backing, and it's this gigantic metaphorical train that was allowed to just go, and let's just see where it goes, and part of the social media train, I just think it has allowed a lot of connections between people. Yes, it's allowed the world to become a lot more smaller place in a sense of like information accessible anytime, anywhere. But gosh, man, like it has also introduced a lot of mechanisms that really feed into the need for instant gratification. And I know we've heard about this for decades now, but it's still just there, just because it hasn't gone away doesn't mean it's disappeared. The capacity to sit through like common experiences and difficulties, and the capacity to accompany. I think social media technology can also kind of work against our loving capacities sometimes. And here I'll call myself out first thing. I mean, I'm checking my phone, and I'm doing those things like that I'm preaching against right now. But I'm just my opinion is that once we wake up more and more to the sense that we're longing for more than just to run back to our feeds. If we collectively kind of wake up together, I think, and I have a sense too. I mean, I'm hopeful that it's gonna get to a place that we're gonna place a greater value on the more humane means of connecting and accompanying each other. Well, that's just my opinion, though.
Delmy, any thoughts on that yourself?
Oh yeah, I agree with a lot of what you shared, Martin. Technology usage can be really great to connect us, especially when we're farther away from others. So that really helps. But also the use of technology right now and how people can sometimes misuse it. We've seen some of the effects it has on, like, for example, teenage girls, because they're seeing people being photoshopped and they're thinking that's the reality. And so again, how that impacts, positive image and how they view themselves. And sometimes that can get really distorted. So really trying to use technology for the greater good, for helping others to connect with each other, but also being mindful that not everything that we see on the internet through technology is what it really seems. It can be quite different. So kind of keeping that in mind.
It'd be very interesting to see, hypothetically, how the filmmakers would have told this story in a post-social media, post-pandemic world. You think about what our characters went through in terms of coming of age, forging their identity, body image. Imagine it'd be a very different film, but probably just as impactful as this one was too, in terms of the way they told the story. I'd like to thank you both for spending your time with us here. This concludes our conversation. We're going to jump right into the movie. For those of you joining us here in the studio, thank you. For those of you who are watching us online, where's the camera? Hi. And in the audience today, we're going to meet again on Friday to answer your questions. So enjoy the film, watch the film, post your questions to our panelists here on the comments sections of social media, which we just kind of criticized, but we're using it nonetheless. Oops, sorry, Facebook is like right there, so they're, sorry. And then join us Friday for the Q&A session, and we'll be meeting on Zoom, and we'll be live streaming that afternoon. Thank you again. Enjoy the film.